And we saved the best for last. Get started here in a couple of minutes.
Feels so good, Jennifer.
Thank you, Megan.
Oh,
Thank you, Betsy and Ajay. They've done a lot of work.
Yeah, this was great.
Give it a couple of minutes. Okay, let me tell you. Because and now it is my honor to introduce our final speaker. Megan Zara is an open education librarian and program designer currently building the Open Education OER program at the University of Texas, Arlington. Her work focuses on helping institutions move from simply saying we support affordability to creating practical, teachable infrastructure for open access and OER. Megan's approach centers on documentation as a pedagogy approach, making often invisible work of open education visible, manageable, and sustainable through repeatable workflows, simple templates, and thoughtful capacity-aware support. Her work reduces overwhelm without lowering rigor. Grounded in care, ethics, capacity building, and universal design for learning, something I'm very passionate about, Megan is especially committed to supporting rural and border serving institutions, where access is shaped not only by cost, but by time, bandwidth, and available support. Her work aligns deeply with the conversations we have had today and offers a powerful vision for us here at Sul Ross State University and the whole Borderlands region on how we can move together forward. Please join me in welcoming somebody that I've learned so much from. She's inspiring me, Megan. And Megan, I think you're muted.
Gotta unmute. Thank you so much, Jennifer. This has been amazing. Y'all have done amazing work. This is all the sessions have been really inspiring. So I appreciate all the work you guys have done. And I really am excited to be here with you. It's an honor to be here at the inaugural Borderlands Open Access Virtual Symposium. I'm excited to share with you what I have today. I want to start with a feeling I think we probably all know really well. It's the feeling of leaving a day like today with all of the stuff we've learned, a day full of good people, generous people, questions, ideas that make you really believe you realize this is why you're doing what you're doing. You realize these are your people too. And it's been so rich and full of possibility. I've heard a lot about dual credit, student success, leadership, language access, local OER programs, open classrooms, open research, discipline-specific practice tools, roadmaps. There's so much, and it's really exciting, but it's also a lot. So not because too many good ideas is a problem, but because we have a lot to carry as well. So we have to kind of figure out what we do carry forward. And I think I heard someone in this session actually ask something very similar to this, is what do I move forward with? Because for me, after a day like today, something creeps in. I look at my inbox and my calendar, and the semester just starts coming back to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. And my question shifts from, was this meaningful and did I learn something? Which I did, and it was. But now what? How do I take what I learned here and turn it into something that actually works long-term and in my context? Something I care about, or something that we can actually use, not just something we can care about, something you believe in and can actually be used in practice. Because there's a lot that I believe in, and I'm like, I don't know how to use it in practice. something that sounds incredible in a session and can survive a semester. So I think that's kind of where the challenge is with open work. There's a lot to choose from. And so it's not only casting this beautiful vision, there's a lot of beautiful visions, but we need to build paths that help move people from the vision to the practice, from this matters to I can actually do this. And when I say path, I don't mean something cold and bureaucratic. I really do mean like repeatable support structures, visible steps that help people keep going after that initial excitement wears off. The things that reduce guesswork, the things that keep support from living in one person's head, because a lot of OER, open access work, lives in one person's head. The things that make the work less dependent on luck, extra time, or one open education fanatic carrying everything alone. So vision is important. It definitely gives us something to reach for. It helps us name what could be different. It often is the very first moment of recognition, where we realize this is what matters and why. But vision can also be really fragile. Vision alone can't create time. It can't reduce confusion. It can't hold someone through the overload, the doubt, and the messy middle trying to do something new. Vision is not The vision is not usually the problem. The problem is everything between the plan and the practice. So vision may be the door, but the path is kind of what helps people keep going after they've gone through. And when I say people, I really do mean all of us, like us today after the symposium, faculty, librarians, designers, administrators, students, anyone trying to move good intentions into actual practice. So that brings me to that question at the heart of what I'm sharing today, is how do we build that path from vision to practice? I've been thinking about this through the image of a door. So much of open work is designed around the door. How do we get people to the door? How do we get them to say yes or just through the door? Those questions matter, but I think we kind of stop there. We act as though once someone is interested in open, once they are convinced and they've made it to the door, the work's done, they've got it. But I kept and I keep seeing a different version of that story, especially with faculty applying for large OER grants. For many of them, interest in the grant was also their first real encounter with open education or OER, open access. And very quickly, I saw how much work lived between interest in the grant and OER and readiness for a sustainable project. There was work to understand open education, work to decide what kind of project made sense, work to build a realistic plan, and work to understand not only how to begin, but like why we were doing this at all. Because an OER project is not a one-time act. It's kind of like getting a pet. It's a commitment. After it's adopted or created or published, it still needs tending, it needs maintenance, revision, accessibility work, and care to remain relevant and usable. The ongoing stewardship is not outside of the work, it's for sure part of it, and it's something I think we miss a lot. And when I started at UTA, there was care. There were workshops and consultations, but there was not yet a visible path from that initial interest to a sustainable, well-formed course materials project. So that's where I started to understand something important. Getting someone to the door is not the same as helping them through it or keeping them going after. A person can be genuinely interested, they can attend the workshop, come to the consultation, they can even write a pretty solid application for a grant. And on paper, they look ready. But readiness on paper doesn't always transfer to readiness for the work or sustained work, because the door can absolutely look exciting. It looks like possibility, relief, alignment, funding, momentum, a chance to build something meaningful. But the doorway can hide everything that comes after the yes, the planning, the decision making, the accessibility work, the revision, the parts that of open that only become visible only when you're already trying to carry them. So sometimes what looks like hesitation or unfinished work is not a lack of care or interest or a lack of faith in the movement. Sometimes it means someone reached the door with only a surface level understanding of what would be required to keep walking through once they've gone there. And I think that's where a lot of open work gets stuck. Not because people are interested, but because the support between yes and sustainable practice is still too thin in a lot of places. So if we stay with this door metaphor, I think we have to look at the hinges. The hinge is where movement lives. It's often overlooked. It's the overlooked mechanism that lets the door open in a stable, repeatable way. The hinge isn't flashy. It's not the part people photograph. And without it, the door doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Without hinges, a door is a barrier or free for all. So if we want open work to begin well and continue sustainably, we have to pay attention to the in between, which I'm calling hinge work. That matters to me professionally and it matters to me personally. Part of why I care so much about hinge work is because I have lived in the forgotten hinges. I've lived in the stretch between being here and getting there, where there felt like a football field away, and everyone else seemed to be crossing like a tiny median. Some of that came from socioeconomic trauma. Some of it comes from a new understanding after a recent autism diagnosis, which helped me see how much of my life I have spent navigating thresholds that looked simple to other people and felt enormous to me. I share this because it helps explain why I notice the hinges. I feel like if the hinges haven't held you back, you might not know to look there when you're working to help someone else. And I think this matters especially in rural and borderland contexts where barriers are rarely abstract. The question's not of if do people care. The question's whether they have what they need to start and keep moving. Money, internet access, time, bandwidth, language, support, confidence, institutional memory. And underneath all of that, that question that sometimes comes up, is this really right for me? Can I really do this? So when I talk about building a path, I'm not talking about like a giant solution because big is not always better. Sometimes what changes everything is the one small light placed exactly where people need it or where they keep getting stuck. So like a visible first step, a clear template, a check-in, a document that keeps the next person from starting at zero. I see this as hinge work. And I didn't come to this out of just like awareness and theory. I came to it by trying to solve a real problem inside a real institution. UTA is unusually fortunate right now. There's a real investment in OER. From the president's office, we get an annual $400,000 commitment to our OER budget to help us do open work. And that really does reflect years of serious funding for OER adoption, modification, and creation. We have funded more than 70 projects, and we have nearly 40 published OER through our OER institutional repository, Maps Open Press. And that's great and that matters. It shows real momentum, real commitment, and belief in the work. But underneath the good news was attention I couldn't ignore. OER projects take real time. Remember, it's a pet. They ask for attention, coordination, follow through, choices, instructional design, and publishing support. So even with strong funding, we kept seeing a familiar pattern. Someone gets a grant and then life happens. A chair moves and changes, a key person leaves, a team shifts, the scope changes. The semester does what semesters do. And suddenly a project with real promise is stranded in the messy middle. That's not a character flaw. It's not a motivation problem. It's a hinge problem. It's an infrastructure gap. The door is open, the vision's there, the values are there, the funding might even be there, but the hinges are weak or squeaking. And when the hinges are weak, the work doesn't disappear. It simply becomes heavier for the people trying to hold it all together, and that's not sustainable. So the question became sharper for me. How do we build capacity at scale by strengthening hinges? How do we move from funding individual projects to building a program, a community that makes follow through more likely, learning more transferable, and open work less dependent on one heroic person? That question led me to a badge program. When I started building open education infrastructure at UTA, my goal was simple: create a clear, scaffolded pathway that could move faculty from "I support this" to "I can do this" without requiring heroics. And at the end of spring 2025, that became my Open Education Trailblazers Canvas course. Is a Canvas course experience with learning outcomes, visible progression, and recognition. And the badges did work. They forced me to make open education teachable. I had to define terms, build progression, write prompts, design activities, create reusable assets. In a way, the badges illuminated a lot of hinge work that I hadn't seen yet. But the launch also taught me that clarity alone doesn't create momentum. A door being present doesn't equal entry. People liked the concept, they saw the value, but engagement was minimal. I got one self-paced completion during the semester and a one long, thoughtful 9-point feedback email. And that wasn't failure, it was information. Faculty weren't resisting, they were at capacity. And self-paced could still mean alone. The path was clear. I had made like a prettier door, but the support at the threshold was still too thin. So another question emerged. What kind of hinge support does this learning actually need for adults to move through it successfully? Around that time, I came across an open Oregon mini grant model that funded exploration as legitimate work, not adoption as the requirement or creation. The idea changed everything for me, really. Instead of asking faculty to commit to OER before they knew what existed in their discipline, I could support the inquiry. I could say and fund, I could search counts, exploring counts, figuring out what's possible counts, and documenting what you find counts. And that's where I started to really understand this idea of documentation as andragogy. And I say andragogy instead of pedagogy because andragogy is actually the study of learning, the adult learning theory and design. And pedagogy is more, we talk about it more around children. So I care about the word because adults do not learn the same as children. Adults bring experience, prior experience, competing responsibilities, identity, doubt, urgency, resistance, self-direction, and lived context into the room. So when I design for faculty, I really want my language and my structure to reflect that. So I've been trying to change from saying pedagogy to saying andragogy so that I'm in line with my audience. So when I say documentation, I don't mean like extra paperwork really, and I don't mean like bureaucracy dressed up as reflection. I mean documentation that helps adults navigate the hinges as they do the work. Documentation that makes the hidden processes visible. So I started building 3 things that could do that work. First, I built the badge content as a learning path. That's where the concepts live. It gives people the language, the shared narrative definitions, and helps them understand what open education is before they are asked to build something with it. Then I built the mini grant as a supported space to protect the place to practice. It gives faculty permission, time, and a small structure to explore what's possible in their discipline without having to promise a full adoption before they're ready. And then at the end of the mini grant, I built the idea of the landscape brief as the thing that carries the learning forward. It's what the faculty, after they've learned everything and looked for and not found things or found things, it's where they tell everybody else. They write it and publish it openly, what they found, what they didn't find, what's missing, and what next steps they think they should take or somebody else could. So the badges or the content that teaches the work, the mini grant holds the space for the work, and the landscape brief carries the work forward. And so this is this hinge work system I've been building. And to make this a little more concrete, one of the clearest examples I have of this documentation as andragogy is my OER tracker. I built it because I realized I was already doing this work manually in my head in my notes, and every time I helped a faculty member search for OER. And people weren't just asking, how do I find it? Where do I find it? They were really struggling with how to search rigorously, how to get a broad view of what existed, how to keep track of promising resources, and how to move from searching to deciding without losing the thread, because OER work is deceptively complex, not complex, but nuanced. And those are all little hinges. So I built the tracker around those little hinge problems, and it's a spreadsheet, but it's not just a spreadsheet, it's a hinge. It holds open the space between curiosity and decision making. And I care about that not because it's humane and helpful, but because it's really practical. The hinge tools I'm talking about, they're not expensive. Most of the open education and OER budget that I have has gone to food to feed people and prizes or stipends. What is expensive is confusion, duplicated labor, rebuilding a path every time a new person arrives, a system that only works when someone heroic has the time to hold it together. A clear path is not just kinder, it's more sustainable and often cheaper than chaos. The more I worked in this system, the more I noticed the strong hinge work shared 3 qualities. It made the path easier to see, it made the work easier to carry, and it made the learning easier to pass on. So I kept coming back to three conditions: care, clarity, and credibility. Clarity is what helps people see the hinge. It makes the path visible. It makes the first step findable. It keeps people from spending all of their energy trying to find out what the work is even is before they begin doing it. Clarity says you don't have to begin in mystery. You don't have to guess your way forward. Here's where to start. Here's where it comes from. And here's the path you can actually walk with a community. Care is what helps people move through the hinge. And care for me is not special treatment, and it's not softness, and it doesn't lower standards. Care is what makes meaningful work possible. I learned this in facilitation because I saw how quickly learning spaces can recreate shame. People show up behind, they show up not doing like the flipped or pre-work, they're juggling too much, they apologize before you've even started. So I started by saying at the beginning of working sessions was, wherever you are in the process, you belong here with us and we want your input. And that sentence is hinge work in miniature. It lowers panic, it lowers shame, and it keeps the door open. It does not remove the rigor. It makes it reachable. That's care, not as a sentiment, but as design. Credibility is what keeps the hinge from disappearing behind the person who just made it. It keeps open work from living only in memory or in one conversation or one moment of inspiration. That is why the landscape brief matters so much to me. It's not just capturing information, it captures process, judgment, it captures what they searched, what they found, what was missing, and what they feel should happen next. And it turns one person's exploration into a hinge for somebody else. So they're not starting from scratch. And because it's shared openly, it's available, it's openly out there, it's discoverable. So we're spreading that. And from Jennifer's last session, you were asking, what are your thoughts? And I had to wait because I was going to share that. But like, my thought is we create shareable learning as we're teaching people and bringing people into the movement. It's all an integrated system. So part of what I want to share with you today is not like just an idea or metaphor or framework. I want to leave you with some of the hinge work I have been building. I'm sharing my in-progress Canvas course because it's becoming the home for all of my documentation, the badges, the topics, the mini lessons, the mini grant structure, and the path from interest to implementation. The course will keep growing, and I plan to share it in the Canvas Commons in the coming months so other institutions can grab all of it and adapt as needed. Because hinge work should not end with one person or one cohort or one institution. If it helps someone build a stronger path, we've got to make it travel. So when I think about what this symposium might mean after today, I come back to this. Maybe the goal is not to leave with like the biggest idea or program path. Maybe it's to leave with the one thing that strengthens a hinge, the one thing that makes one next step visible, or the one thing that makes a threshold less lonely, or the one that keeps one person from starting from scratch. Because sustainable open work rarely begins with one giant breakthrough. It really does begin with smaller lights, a clearer first step, a shared template, a community instead of isolation, a trail left behind. Big is not better. Sometimes what lasts is the quiet, repeatable thing. So I want to end with one small invitation, not a 5-year plan, not one more impossible thing to carry home, just an act of noticing. What's one hinge in your work that needs tending? Where are people getting to the door but not making it through? And what is one small support that could strengthen the hinge? Because if enough of us leave today, not only admiring the door, but tending to the hinges, then this symposium does not end here with just great information and ideas. It becomes a path, a structure, a trail of smaller lights. And that's really how I think open work becomes real. Thank you.
Wow, Megan, I am so inspired. Does anybody have any questions? Dr. Rodriguez.
That was an accident. I was gonna clap, but there's so much that you bring. The passion for your work really resonated with me, so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad. I do feel a lot of passion.
Dr. Hahn.
Yes, Megan, that was very inspirational. Very, very inspirational.
Thank you. Thank
That
you.
analogy of the metaphor of the door with the hinge and then the pathway through, that really could apply to any kind of initiative that we think is important enough to roll out. But typically, depending upon our institutions, we rely on that one person to do everything, right? And we rely on that one person's passion. And then when that person goes away, so does the initiative. And so it's not sustainable. And, I applaud your university for making that investment into OER. How did that happen? Like, did the president or upper administration, how did they come to that realization that this is something that we need to make a significant investment in?
That's a great question. It happened before my time at UTA. It was one librarian who passionately was pushing open work, and that's how it happens. It's one person that keeps talking, keeps saying things. And our provost is so on board that the university is actually, we've stopped all inclusive access contracts. None can be restarted, and we are pushing very hard for OER.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
That is amazing for your students. So, Megan, you're very inspirational. Yeah.
I have one more question. So, when we talk about open access, we talk about inclusivity, a lot of times we don't take into consideration our neurodivergent students or even our neurodivergent faculty. And so a colleague of mine in the College of Education actually brought this up to me. And when we consider like what is a high quality online course or what is a high quality OER, when we look at that, when we look at accessibility, we don't always think about our neurodivergent folks. So what is the conversation in OER or open access communities about neurodivergency?
I love that question. The conversation is still pretty quiet.
Okay.
I find that every time I share vulnerably, it's kind of new, and people are. And I mean, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. I've been reading her work for years, and like I get that share vulnerably from her. And part of being the person that is neurodivergent, we have to share. We have to share openly so people can consider us, because we mask hard, and it's part of our experience to mask, and so we have to become more vulnerable to share so people can consider us more. And so I think the conversation is we all have to start asking questions and hearing, listening, believing when people share a different experience.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
As we conclude today's Open Access Symposium, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone who made this event possible today. Our presenters, moderators, planning team, which includes the 23 faculty that have really, took on this extra work this spring. I'm very grateful to you because this is our work. This isn't my fellowship, this is our work. And so each one of you who have joined today, we have people from 11 different institutions, students who have a voice and open access to, all of those who contributed such meaningful conversations. Thank you for presenting and sharing and being part of the conversation. We're especially grateful to our leadership, to our library director, Betsy Hilsa, to Ajay, to our Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, to Dr. Cantinas, to our dedicated committee, again, thank you so much. Before you log off, we really do invite you to take a few moments to complete our symposium evaluation. Your feedback is incredibly important to us because we want to continue building this work. You know, Megan just talked about the doorway. We're looking in the doorway. We haven't really fully embarked yet on our path. So in particular, we would love to hear about your vision. Specifically, how do we envision open access and OER evolving in the borderlands in West Texas? What supports, partnerships, or resources are most needed in your context, from your perspective, to make this sustainable, to talk, to take what Megan is talking about? How do we build from here? What ideas from today's sessions can we build together moving forward? Your insights will directly inform our next steps and help us shape a more accessible, a more responsive, a more sustainable future for our whole entire region. Thank you again for being part of this growing community and for the work you are doing to expand access to all learners. I do want to give a special shout out to all the fellows who joined me today in the coordinating board. You did not have to do this. You did not have to dedicate your time to the Borderlands area into West Texas, but our heart is really big today. And so we really do want to thank you. So thank you so much. And that concludes our first open access symposium. Have a great rest of your Friday. Thank you so much.
Jennifer.
Congratulations. That was lovely. Wonderful.
No, you were lovely. That slide deck was just amazing. I mean, I
Thank
wanted to cry
you.
because I remember